Well, welcome everybody to the ROS Media channel. I've got a very interesting person with me today. I would like you to meet Brady Bennett. Brady is from the Namgis Nation. And today, what we want to touch on is a number of things. We want to touch on the corruption of the crown and how that's been affecting Brady and his people. Also, want to just touch on a little bit about Brady's history and obviously where he's come from, why we're actually having this conversation today, and then hopefully what we'll do is we'll have a part two interview as well, where we can start talking about remedy to the corruption of the crown. So Brady, welcome to the ROS Media channel. Grateful to have you on today. What time is it with you, by the way? You're over in Canada, aren't you?
Yeah, it's now like just about 10:20 in the morning.
Okay. All right.
Right.
So that's quite early. That's about 8 hours behind us here in the UK. It's 6:20 in the evening. But Brady, just as an introduction, could you just give us a little bit of a backstory as to who you are, what you do professionally speaking, and really what's led us to kind of connect and jump on a call together today?
Yeah, well, I mean, it goes back to when my brother was stabbed to death 30 something years ago, and I realized that there was corruption with the crown there. There was a whole lot of stuff going on because the cops conveniently lost all of the evidence. The guy got away with a slap on the wrist for stabbing my brother 18 times. A couple years in jail, and that was it. And I was like, there's something not right with this, where my life is worth that little. And you guys are treating me like I'm some kind of commodity and pulling me over and harassing me and doing this and that. But yeah, I realized that at a very young age. I was about 15 years old at that, and I didn't feel like anything was quite right with what was going on with the systems. And I started to get into that. I learned a little bit about my family, my history, and I learned that my family actually holds hereditary chieftainship titles of the land that I'm on, which is the Namgis Nation near the north end of the island. And they hold it with the titles of the grizzly bear, the thunderbird, and the killer whale, which is the lord of the land, the lord of the air, and the lord of the water. Law, as you all know. Some of you have probably studied what law means. It means land, air, and water. And we are the law of this land with the grizzly bear clan because we have the land here. We are the kings of this land, and our laws supersede the crown's laws because we've never made a treaty with them. It's all unceded territory, and Canada is a corporation that is squatting on unceded territory, claiming over it the lives and the ways of the people and the things they can do and the things they can't do, telling them how to live on their own land. It's like walking into somebody's home essentially and telling them what to do. And we are part of a big thing. 3 generations going back, there was our children were raped, murdered, and abused in residential schools, all put on one little island, which is actually our graveyard islands where we buried our dead. And we were never meant to inhabit that island, but because of the tides around it, and they put us all on there from all around, all over the place. They stuck all the kids on that island, and some of the families went there to be by their kids, and many of them never left. It was a place where we buried our dead so that they could see us harvesting salmon across the way in the Nimkish River, and it has a kind of an eerie feeling to the island, but also there's a lot of history there. And to me, the residential schools, the abuse that they did to our kids, throwing them in ovens if they were screaming too much, beating them, raping them, murdering them for speaking their own language. They would get severely beaten. And they tried to basically beat the culture out of them and make them ashamed of their indigenous heritage and their culture and everything else because we weren't Christians, right? So when they discovered North America, we weren't Christians, so we were not treated as people. We were not given rights. But later on, as it came out, we are flesh and blood. We are the indigenous peoples of this land. So this was our land, and our laws supersede the crown's laws. But they like to shove it down our throat as if though they have a right to treat us like slavery. And I've stated to them multiple times that forced compliance is slavery, no matter what way you put it. I've stated that in court. I've stated that with the cops when they pull me over and everything else. And there's a lot of different things that are going on with this world and this society, and they're trying to beat us down and force us into things. But if they can do it one by one, they're going to win. But if we band together, then they don't stand a chance because there's way more of us than there are of them. So once we wake up and we start to realize, like, that's one thing, waking up and realizing what this actually is. It's a slave system that they've set up, that involuntary, you don't have to even say anything. You've already volunteered in it because you're part of their corporate systems. I think I always say to people, Henry Ford said it best when he stated that if people understood how the banking and the monetary system work, there would be a violent revolution by tomorrow morning. And
Yeah.
I think we're coming to a time now where people are actually waking up, which is exciting to be alive in. It's exciting to be a part of. It's exciting to see the change and to really like be the one to kind of push it. Because in my indigenous culture, we have a thing where we think about how is our life going to affect the next 7 generations after we die. It's not even about
Okay.
this moment at all. How is it going to affect the next 7 generations after we die?
So you mentioned earlier about how you've been obviously pushing this with the courts, and you also mentioned that you've actually won some court cases, haven't you? Do you want to just unpack that for a second?
Myself, I haven't won court cases, but there is people within my groups that I'm part of there, of the freedom groups, People of the Salmon, and there's also the Alliance of Indigenous Nations, and they have won cases with the Crown stating that Indigenous people do not need to have a license or insurance on their vehicle to travel on roads within BC, within British Columbia, which is where I'm at. And
Okay.
so it's actually stated in a court case that we don't need that, but they're still trying to shove it down our throats. Like they have a
Okay.
right to. And
And I know you said that despite that, despite the fact that there's been some wins in the court, you mentioned that there was an incident that you mentioned earlier before we kind of came on camera to do with a police officer and yourself, wasn't there? Do you want to just
yeah,
talk about that as well for a second?
yeah. The guy's name's Olivier VJ. He's in Port McNeill Dispatch Department, and he has a very violent history of assaulting people. He has traumatized numerous people on this land. I've talked to people, even mentioning his name, people start crying because he's a very abusive asshole, and he doesn't do anything that's I don't know what you'd call it, legal, lawful, right. Ignores your sovereign authority. But what happened with my incidents twice? First time, he comes at me and he arrested me. I had to tell somebody to take my keys because my child was sleeping in the back seat, and they basically said, if you resist, I'm going to smash your face into the pavement. So I didn't want to have a big incident and have to get whatever rushed off to the hospital in front of my child while she was sleeping in the back. She was 3 years old at the time, and I gave my keys to a stranger. And I had to beg the cop to let me out because I said, I don't even know this person there. Please don't do this to me. I have 50-50 custody of my child. Don't do this to me. If you do this, I'm going to lose custody of my child. And he let me out. But Oliver VJ, he was like, what are you doing? Let him out. Why are you letting him out? And just like righteously pissed off that he was letting me out, that he wouldn't take me away to jail and to prison and throw me in jail for a long time for nothing. And so the second time I ran into him, he pulled me over for allegedly not coming to a complete stop, right? And he pulls me over and he gets out of his car, and I recognize him right away. I'm like, aren't you the guy who assaulted me? I need to turn my camera on because I don't feel safe with you. I knew he was going to try pulling something. So as I was trying to turn my camera on, he ripped open my car door, started assaulting me, and I told him, just leave me alone. I was trying to turn my camera on so I could record this while he was doing this, and I just pushed his hand away. And then he hauled off and he punched me in the head and a couple times while I was seated in my car, all over not coming to a complete stop. And then he rips me out of my car and he pulls a gun on me and he tries to point it at my head. And I had to take his gun away so that he couldn't shoot me. My daughter would be an orphan today over what? Over a traffic stop? This guy is going way above and beyond what it should be to try to be the pursuant of the public, which is what they're supposed to be. Like, I am the public. I'm supposed to be above the police, not the other way around. Forced compliance is slavery, no matter what way you put it. And so it's illegal in Canada, and it's punishable by 25 years in jail and $1 million fine if you go through the legal system. But I want to take it to something else, to the military, because people are being hung and imprisoned for life for this type of activity with the military right now. There's a couple of people that have been arrested. The judges and cops and lawyers that are super corrupt, they've started to arrest some of them across the world, but they're not announcing it because people wouldn't be able to accept how corrupt this system is. Their heads would explode. They would go into denial. They would be like, no way, the system's this way. Oh my God, I've been duped my whole life.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's getting people to wake up and to. I think the biggest problem that you've got is that you're not trying to talk to people with a clean slate. You're trying to talk to people who are so deeply preconditioned and pre-programmed into how the world is versus what the reality is of the world. I was one of those people. I'm not going to lie. I was one of those people who just went to work and paid my taxes and did all the things that everybody does and just be a good little citizen. And when I found out about that separation between the living man and the dead corporate entity or dead corporate version of you that sits on that, as we call it here, the monopoly board of commerce, where the crown owns that playing piece. You don't own it. You can't control it.
And you
That
don't
was
even know it's got the same name.
a huge awakening for me. Huge awakening for me. And I think the more you look into it and the deeper you go, I mean, there are a lot of rabbit holes that you can go down that maybe you shouldn't. But I think that just the core element of you are not the name on your birth certificate, number one. And that you are representing that in fraud, number two. And the entity that you're representing, you don't even own it, which is why it's fraud, because the crown owns it. And if the crown owns it and you bring any of that into the legal system, being corrupt in itself, then you've got the legal system that is corrupt, that is controlled by the banks. The banking system is also corrupt, that is controlled by the elites. And it just filters down to us who appear to be, in reality, right at the very bottom of the pile, when in reality, we should be at the top of the pile. We should be under God and everything else falls under us. But they've reversed that whole situation, haven't they? Where we are at the bottom. We have no rights, as you put it earlier. And if you try and battle anything of this nature in the legal system, chances are you're not going to win, because it doesn't matter whether it's lawful. It doesn't matter what we know to be true, what we know to be right. The problem that people have is that taking the lawful truth into a corrupt legal world, the crown will always win. So what we need to figure out is, how do we turn the tables? How do we flip that switch? And it starts with awareness, doesn't it? I mean, when do you feel you first became fully aware of that situation with the crown and the corporate entities and how they all play out? I mean, you mentioned that you obviously had that horrible incident with your brother when you were younger, and that raised a lot of questions in your mind. But from that point, at what point in your life or in your journey did you have that sudden realization that I am not that name that's on my birth certificate or that's on these letters that keep arriving, demanding payment or whatever it may be?
When I sat down with an old friend of the family, he was married to my cousin for a while, and he started telling me about ICBC and everything else, and about the cops and about everything, and about the people of the salmon in Vancouver. In British Columbia here, they represent a lot of people. I actually have them working with me on the case, and they represent a lot of people. What happened was he was telling me that it's not what you think it is. ICBC, all those debts, they're nothing. And he started telling me about these stories. Like, one guy got pulled over for not having a license and not having insurance, and he was traveling around, and the cops came in a swarm. And so they texted, and they came in like a swarm, the indigenous people, right? The brothers that sticking together, they all came in and started recording the cops, and the cops were like hiding their faces and like not showing their faces on the camera because they knew that they were in the wrong. And he ended up explaining to the cops that this is allowed. I'm traveling. I'm not driving. I'm traveling. I have a right to travel. And if you try to stop me, I can take you to court for it. Here it says so on the Department of Transportation that traveling is for commercial vehicles. Someone who is just driving is for commercial vehicles. Insurance is for commercial vehicles. A license is for commercial, making money off of it person. It's not for the living man and woman. And you can travel. You have a right to travel. It's not a right. It's not a privilege. It's a right. is what it says in there. It's not a privilege to be able to travel on a public road on your own, to be able to travel in any way. So they were like, okay. The police understood it because he showed the court cases and he showed everything else, and he got it. The police actually apologized to him for pulling him over. And so he goes to the tow yard, and says, hey, can I have my car back? You guys confiscated it illegally. And the guy was a total prick about it. He's like, no, you got to pay all these fees and you got to pay all this. And he's like, are you sure you want to be like this? And the guy's like, yeah, get the fuck out of my face if you're not going to pay. And so the guy's like, okay. So he went to the courts and he filed all the paperwork and he got everything done. And he actually took his business. He seized his bank account. He seized his house. He seized all of the vehicles. And he had every vehicle on his tow yard towed from where it was up into a fenced off property that he had up in Squamish there. And the guy wrote him a check for $2 million to give him his life back. And he said, no, fuck you. To him. He's like, you wanted to be an asshole to me, so now you're going to learn a lesson. You wanted to play games with me and try to pretend like you owned my things. Now you have to learn. And so I don't know how long he left that guy for, or if he ever gave it back, but that's when I learned that it wasn't what it seems. That this game that they're playing is nothing like what they say it is. It's nothing like what they claim it is. And we have a lot more power than what they say we do. And a lot more freedom. But they like to shove it down our throats and make it so hard that we eventually give up.
Yeah. And I think that's the problem. Life is so stressful and people are so busy that in a lot of cases they don't have any fight left in them, do they? Yeah. But what really I want to talk about is
another thing. The family court is another thing too. It's an attack on men and families. Because what they do is the government really has no place in coming into a family, into their home, into their lives, and telling them what to do with their own children. Like when they did that to me, I stated in court, given the fact that church and parliament operated residential schools on land that neither owned, you raped, murdered, and abused 3 generations of my family and my family's children, you've lost all legal, moral, ethical, and lawful rights to govern over what happens in between me and my child on land that doesn't even belong to you. In fact, it belongs to my family. We hold hereditary chieftainship titles of it, and you've never made a treaty. So you are, in fact, trespassing here. So I said that to them, probably about a dozen times, and they completely ignored it. Their judge's eyes went like this when I stated that. And one time the judge actually got up and ran out of the courtroom. He said some closing remark, and then boom, that was it. He ran out. Like you could see the fear in his eyes.
Wow.
And he just ran out. And they completely ignored it and steamrolled over and told me I wasn't allowed to see my kid without supervision for 10 months, even though I was the main care provider of my own child. I learned during that time that when you take a man's kids away, he won't give a shit about anything else. He will fight. I had to be in family court to fight to see my own kid 2 hours after, like 2 hours after I found out my mom died. And it brought up a lot of epigenetic memories about like residential schools and how we were raped and murdered and abused and the fears around it and everything else. So knowing NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, how to rewrite the subconscious patterns, I had to go really deep inside my own programming and actually heal myself, heal some of those epigenetic memories, some of those traumas and some of those things inside myself so that I could, be free of it. Because it was pretty overbearing. Like, I don't know if you know what epigenetics is.
Well, I wanted to touch on that as well, because you mentioned earlier that part of what you do professionally is coaching, isn't it? And that you help people when it comes to their, past traumas, maybe something from their childhood that has stuck with them and has programmed them to be a certain way. So talk to me a little bit about that. Talk to me about your coaching and how you help people there.
Yeah. I work with people about rewriting their subconscious programming and updating the subconscious programs. Like most people, they have a phone, they have a computer, they update it all the time. Like when was the last time you updated your phone? Right?
Yeah, probably quite recently, I should imagine.
Recently, right. When was the last time you updated your subconscious programs?
Yeah, exactly.
They're more powerful than your phone. They're more powerful than your computer. They run everything inside your life, inside yourself, inside your perception of reality. Right. So I help people to rewrite the subconscious programs and update them, and so that they could be better and closer to what they want to be, where they want to be, and where they want to go in life. Like I was explaining earlier, for instance, there's one person that came to me and she was afraid of being seen and heard. Didn't know why. She was a businesswoman, right? So this is very contradictory to what she's trying to do in the world.
Very much
And
so, yeah.
yeah, you have to get up in front of people when you're in business. Like, so she was terrified when she got up in front of people. She was terrified, just trembling and shaking and didn't know why. And she told me about this. So she came to me the first session. We went back and we found out that when she was a little girl, her like she got pushed off the monkey bar. She was up there going, "Look at me, I'm the king of the castle, ha ha ha!" And boom, a bully pushed her over. She fell down, got hurt, went to the hospital. And in her subconscious mind, the program was created that don't stand up and be seen and heard. The bully's going to push you over. You're going to end up in the hospital via a fear response. So we were able to rewrite that and change how everything affected her and how she saw it and how it affected her throughout all time, reality, space, and dimensions. Within a week, she was coming up to me at one of the business functions. She's like, "What the fuck did you do to me? This is fucking awesome." It was eliminated, completely gone. Right? We
Wow.
eliminated that
Amazing.
response by updating the programming in the brain. Like I said, you update your phone. When was the last time you updated what's in between your ears? Most people run off of default programming because they don't
Hmm.
understand they can customize the programs inside their brain to be whatever they want. Set off different firing paths, upload like more self-love and appreciation, which is a big one. Like if you don't love yourself, you don't appreciate yourself, you're going to settle for less. You're going
Yeah.
to let people treat you and run all over you all the time. You're going to just settle for abuse. You're going to settle for, the crappy house in a cardboard box because you don't think you deserve any better.
So
But
what's the process that you go through to actually achieve that? I mean, how do you tap into somebody's subconscious mind? I mean, just briefly, I'm not expecting you to go into a ton of detail, but
well, the best way to do it, it's kind of like lemon meringue pie. You can't really know what it tastes like unless you take a bite. So I'll always do a quick little exercise to kind of show you what it is so that you can have a little bite and see what it is and what it does for yourself, right? So we're just going to go quick little exercise here. Just close your eyes and imagining somebody that you really don't like, somebody that you have like negative feelings towards and everything else. And as you're closing your eyes, you imagine that person, all the feelings, all the five senses, all of the things that are there, and imagining that person, placing them on a graph down below on like a little piece of graph paper. And as you place them down on the graph down below at the bottom corner, because you don't think very highly of them, you then just kind of open your eyes and close your eyes again. And imagine somebody that you really love, somebody that you appreciate, and you put them up on the top part, up on the top corner over here, imagining them over there with all the light, all the love, all the clarity, everything else in them. And as you see them up there, you just imagine yourself reaching out, grabbing a hold of down below and starting to move it up and over towards the other side. As you go further and further up, you notice the energies are starting to connect, they're starting to wire, they're starting to talk to each other, to communicate one another, and they're starting to fire back and forth. As they get closer and closer, you can feel the energy starting to mix, mingle, communicate, barter with each other, and get to know each other until they become one. You notice the energies becoming one, and it's a little bit of releasing some of that negative energy that you had towards those people, that particular exercise.
right, okay.
And it's about neuro linguistic programming, which is
Yeah.
basically the language we speak to ourselves, the way that we visualize things, the way that we do things, the way that we see things, using all of our senses and changing and updating some of that programming inside of our subconscious mind. There's various different techniques like, waving your hand in an upward motion in front of your face 3 times actually boosts your mood. It elevates your mental alertness, your mental
Okay.
awareness, and your mental state,
Yeah.
right? Little things like that. Like I will go into the forest sometimes, and if there's a little bridge over top of a river, I'll stand and I'll look with the water flowing up in an upward motion away from me, and that
Ah, okay.
boosts my mental
Same
state.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Or on the back of a boat. You're looking on the back of a boat and you see the water constantly going up in front of you.
Away from you. Yeah, which is
Yeah,
upwards. Okay.
yeah.
So that's obviously what you do professionally speaking. Just kind of going back to the Namgis Nation. I mean, what's the goal here? Because fighting against the crown, as we know, is a difficult task. We see it around the world. We've got members around the world. We've got people who are being, are in those kind of situations that are finding it very difficult, to stand up for themselves, to battle against, unlawfully being charged or billed or whatever it may be for certain things. And I think, like I said earlier, that the fact that people are so tired, they're so stressed, they're so busy with day-to-day life, that it leaves little room for them to be able to devote enough time to this to to be able to come up with a satisfactory solution to the situation that they find themselves in. So there's these constant battles, whether it be paying taxes, or whether it be credit card bills, or whatever it may be. People are financially pressured, and then when they come to the realization that they're not even responsible for those debts, they are the creditor, not the debtor, which we speak about here. And when they get to that realization that they can actually do something about that, the difficulty that people have then is following through. While it looks good on paper, and you can't argue with the law and how it's written, it is undisputable. But you then try and take that into the legal system and into a court with a corrupt judge and everything else that we've spoken about. People struggle with that follow through. So, with everything that you've sort of seen over the years, whether it be personal attacks on yourself, splitting your family, obviously the difficulties that you've had with custody over your child, what happened with your brother, the incident you mentioned with the police officer, constant abuse, what's been happening generationally with your family as well. I mean, how do you, where do you draw your strength from, would you say, to continue with this?
Well, I just tell myself I asked for it because I wanted freedom. I wanted to be away from the system. And, one of the things about asking for it is you have to be specific how you want it, because they will throw you through many loops. Like, 5 years ago, I said, I want to know there's money coming. And I got hit by a car. I flew 20 feet and I landed head first, and a cop saw the whole incident happening, and all of a sudden there was money coming towards me. I knew it, but
Yeah.
and it wasn't very specific at that. So I understand that I asked for this, that I subconsciously knew that this wasn't right, that the system wasn't right, and that everything wasn't right. And it's not about me so much as what's going to happen in the next 7 generations, which enables me to bear a lot more pain, a lot more grit, a lot more bullshit. And one of the things I do as well, like I say, I do NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, is about the language we speak to ourselves. I don't use the word hard. I don't use the word difficult. I don't use the word that have those negative connotations, because they have a strong energy around them, right?
Yeah.
Negative condensation and negative everything else around it. So what I do is I change the word hard and difficult to challenging, because nobody likes a hard or difficult time, but everybody loves a challenge. Challenges can be overcome, and that gets the mental state of the mind to start to be like, okay, how can I do it? How can I do it? How can I do it?
Yeah.
What's this? What's the next step? How is this going to help me? What's this going to, and you start breaking it down. Your mind is a brilliant, brilliant thing. And if you put it to work the proper ways, it will come up with solutions. It'll come up with different things. It'll pop things in front of your face, and you'll all of a sudden notice certain things. It's kind of like, your ex-girlfriend drove a yellow car. You never saw yellow cars around, but all of a sudden now you see them everywhere.
Yeah.
Because, your
I
ex-girlfriend.
think they call that cognitive bias, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of how I do that. And I look at my daughter and I think to myself, well, I'm fighting to make the world a better place for her. I don't want her to have to go through all this trauma that I've had to go through. Like when I had to be in family court 2 hours after I found out my mom died, that hit hard, because I never even had a chance to do anything. And, I had to hold in my tears because I was terrified that my ex was going to find out I was crying in public and call me mentally unstable and keep my kid away from me for longer. So I had to do that just to, because I'm a guy or whatever, I had to muster up the strength not to cry. And it took me a long time to be able to cry again about my mom dying and not being here. It took me a long time. Even after we did 50-50, it still took me a long time to break free from that whole mentality because I was terrified that it was going to be used against me in the courts and everything else. But I have been going through a lot of different healing as well, like with Mankind Project. It was a new warrior training, and I had a whole weekend where we didn't eat anything except for oranges and apples and nuts and a cup of coffee in the morning.
Okay.
Because these methods that they go through are so intensive that you vomit. You throw up all the negative energy. Like some people just have so much negative stuff inside of them that it was an intense method, and they will vomit. So they have carpets laid out, a rug for like each group. They break off into groups and go through all these different things and healing techniques. And they all recognized that I was holding into the tears of my mom dying. And so I had like probably 15 to 18 men holding me up like this and swaying me back and forth and saying, welcome tears, welcome tears, welcome tears. And I cried, let it all out, and started to open up towards that and letting go of that. And so I call my strength from my ancestors, from my mom's spirit, from my grandpa's spirit, from my grandma's spirit, all the spirits that are there, all the ancestors that are before me, and any sort of spirit guide or anything else that's out there. I call that in, and I look at myself in the mirror, in the eyes, and I say, you got this. Because that's one of the most powerful meditations you can do, is your eyes are your gateway to your soul, right? So when you go into a mirror and you look into the eyes of yourself and you say, I love you. You say your name and you say, I love you. You speak that love into your soul. When you say, you got this, you speak that into your soul. When you say, you are strong, you are powerful, you're literally speaking that into your soul. And it's a deep, deep meditation. So I say things like that to myself in the mirror on a regular basis. And I actually, like, the power of believing is really strong. You know, if you believe, I got this. Like, that is one of the anchors that I actually did with neuro-linguistic programming, tapping my chest like this and saying, I got this. It sets off that thing, because I've set an anchor in there with all of the five senses, all of the different things, all of the everything. And every time I do that, it sets off that high peaked emotion. And it literally, like, just after doing that, I feel tingles all over my body. Like,
I can see just from you showing me just there. You mentioned a moment ago about that what you do now. You're not thinking about the here and now, but you're thinking about how is that going to impact, generationally, 5, 6, 7 generations down the line. My question would be, with what you know and what you know about the corrupt system, and for example, the agenda that's coming as well, the 2030 agenda. We don't really have 7 generations, do we? So, I mean, what are your thoughts surrounding that, and how that affects you, how that affects your people, how that affects your family? Because what I want to try and consider here is solutions as well to problems that we face. Because we're running out of time when we think about it in terms of this global agenda that's coming in. It's coming in quick. It's coming in right under our noses, but people are not awake enough to recognize the true agenda behind everything that they talk about in the 2030 global agenda.
If you try to point it out, they call you a quack or a conspiracy theorist or whatever else to discredit you and be like, because they're, brain dead. Sheeple following. We're not at the time to try to wake up the people that are sleeping anymore. We're now here to try to wake up the lions and get us all standing together, because we're literally at war with them. I actually said that the cops' act upon me was literally an act of war upon me and my people. And it is. And I'm taking it like it's a war, because he straight up ripped me out of my car, punched me in the head, everything else, and almost killed me. So at the end of the day, I'm going to be charging him with attempted murder, because that's what it was. He ripped me out of my car and he tried to kill me and he tried to shoot me. But I was able to survive that because of that. So with the agenda that's coming, what I want to do on my land which is a big chunk of property up here, the Namgis Nation. It is our land. I want to come back and claim it as our land and create a real life healing center, self-sustaining villages, and have another option for people to come to. Because I do energy healing with my practice as well. Like I've healed cancers, I've healed different things, energies of people, and taught them how to heal it themselves too. Because it's all energy. Everything is energy. Everything. Like there's medicineless hospitals in Beijing, China, where they have healed cancer. If you look up Greg Braden, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's a pretty well-known guy. And on YouTube, there's a video of medicineless hospital in Beijing, China, where they have a live clip of a video of a cancer cell inside there, and then they have a still photo of what it looked like. And on the live clip, you can see these practitioners are coming around and start chanting, and you can see it starts to shake and shake, and then it smells, shrinks and shrinks and shrinks until there's nothing. And I didn't quite understand how I had healed cancer of a friend of mine. At one point, she had like cancer under the arm, and she was going to go in for surgery, and she told me, because she didn't want me to think I was ghosting her, she was going to disappear for 3 months and heal herself and yada yada. And I went into my house and I sat down and I did a meditation, and boom, I developed a big huge zit right where she said that her thing was. And I said, make sure you promise me that you're going to go in and get checked out. Make sure you still have to go for the surgery, because I'm pretty sure I just healed you. So she went in to check up to see if she still had to go for it. It was gone. There was no trace. Amazing. There was nothing. And I didn't know exactly how or why or what it had happened with it, but I knew that I'd healed the cancer and with the energy. And I didn't know until I saw that clip with Greg Braden about the medicineless hospital. I'm like, that was it. That was exactly what I did.
Yeah.
With that energy.
And that's another element of what we're wanting to do here and what we're wanting to build here at the Republic of Old Souls. We want alternative healthcare. We want the free energy that we know is available. We want the travel that we know is available. We want the good, wholesome food that we know is available, but the corporations are trying to control farming and food production, all of this stuff. So all the things that, when you think about it, it's just stripping it back down to the basics, isn't it? Good health, good food, good quality people around you, all like-minded, living off the land, being at peace, not harming anyone, with no ill intent, and just there to serve and uplift one another. That's all we're looking for when it comes to building our republic. The problem with that is we live in a society and we live in a system that requires money to do that.
And the money system is kind of ridiculous too, because like with the natural resources up here, for instance, okay, like I go chanterelle picking, which chanterelles are like a really highly prized mushroom that's full of like nutrients and everything else. It goes for $40 a pound down in the city. But up here, they buy it for $3.50 a pound for the people who go pick it from the forest. For the people who do all the work to go and get it, they pay them $3.50 a pound. Take it. Somewhere along the way, it gets jacked up to $25 to $40 a pound down in the cities. Because people are making more money out of this, and another money, like people charging more and more, and it gets stacked up to like $40 a pound. So the people who do all the work don't get the money. And fish, for instance, here, fish is like, 19 cents to $2 a pound, depending on which one it is. And the $2 a pound one, they take and sell for $25 a pound in the supermarket. They somewhere down the way, they get jacked up 10 times, a little more than 10 times the amount.
Yeah.
And somebody makes a massive amount of profit, and the guy who goes and gets it doesn't get anything. So they have to catch a ton more just to be able to put it out to everybody else. And that's been a battle with our people too, the salmon and the fish farms and everything else, because the killer whales live off it. There's a lot of things up here that live off of the salmon, and the fish farms were killing the salmon. So they finally got rid of the fish farms. And all of a sudden this year we had a huge run. Like it was the biggest run in years that we've had. So it's like starting to make a comeback now. They're starting to heal themselves because we got rid of the fish farms years ago. And they're starting to make a little bit of a comeback because colonialism isn't really in with the whole systems anymore that they put in there, trying to claim they own. But yeah, there's these, I think, self-sustaining villages, real life healing centers, that's been a goal of mine for a while now, and it needs to happen faster. Like I know I need to build it like now. I need to get it going so that it can be up and running, because right now we are literally running out of time to be able to do stuff like this. Like
Yeah,
5 years from now, who knows what's going to be like if they really throw in this agenda.
exactly.
10 years from now, who knows?
And I think that kind of brings us. I know we were potentially going to touch on this later on, but we've got some time. We've got a little bit of time. Let's touch on solutions because, for anybody that's watching this, if you resonate with Brady's story, and it might be in a completely different way, it might be just that you feel the oppression of the system. You may not have felt it quite as physically as maybe Brady has, but if you feel the oppression of the system, the corruptness of the corporations around us, of the crown, and how that affects everybody from day to day, rising cost of living, rising cost of food, stresses at work. Years and years ago, people used to work and work on the land. They would live off the land. They would work hard to produce themselves the necessary food with the right nutrition for their families. Now, what do? We go to work all day instead, and we use the money that we make to go and buy crap at the supermarkets. That's basically how things have changed. And we wonder why people's health is suffering. We wonder why cancer is on the rampage. We wonder why all of these different things are creeping in. Autism is on the increase. Alzheimer's is on the increase. These are things that never happened years and years and years ago, and yet now they are. So, how do we fix that? What's the solution to that? Well, we have a protocol here that is called the Great Escape. And it's aptly named the Great Escape Protocol because we have tried and tested methods now that can help people reduce their cost of living, to be able to recycle the money that they actually use. Because whether we like it or not, for projects like the one that you have, Brady, that's going to take some money to be able to put that into place. We know that, we recognize that, as anybody else does. If somebody wants to start a healing center, or somebody wants to start a retreat, or whatever it may be that they want to do, or so if somebody just wants to buy some land and they want to create themselves a small holding and they just want to live off the land themselves, grow their own food, raise their own livestock, whatever it may be, it requires money to be able to get that all set up. And because people are so much on this hamster wheel of going to work, paying for their, like I said, the rising cost of living and food and bills and taxes and fuel for their car that they don't even own, all of these things, they're just in that perpetual state of slavery, aren't they? And what
Mm-hmm.
we want is for people to be able to take a step back from that and understand that there are ways and means where they can break free from that. So the protocols that we have in place here are fivefold. There are 5 different protocols. Okay. The first one is what we call infinite money. Okay, which is recouping your bank payments. How you can actually recoup the money that leaves your bank account. Because if people understand how money actually works, which most people don't, money revolves around the fact that you are a creditor to the commercial system, not a debtor to it. So every penny that leaves your bank account is actually a credit that you have created. It's a surety that you have created. And you have the ability to recoup that back to source, back to where it came from, which is you. So if your cost of living for a year, for example, was $100,000, would it not make sense for you to be able to recoup that $100,000 back at the end of the year and then just use it again? And then do the same and use it again, rather than slaving for somebody else to create another $100,000 worth of credit and security that you've created, and just keep doing that every single year. You can stay on the slavery side, on the hamster wheel, or you can get into what we call the infinite money protocol, where you can recoup every penny that's left your bank account through the IRS back to source, and then just reuse that same credit for the coming year. That would reduce somebody's cost of living down by pretty much 100%, wouldn't it? Back down to zero. So that's the first thing. The second protocol we have is for people to be able to recoup old mortgages or even live mortgages that they have now. Abandoned credit, yet again, you are the source of that credit. When you go to the bank or to the financial institution and you want to borrow money for a house, you're actually issuing the bank with the credit in the first place. And they then turn that on its head, turn it into a loan, lend it back to you with interest. So you have the ability to also recoup mortgages. Imagine what that could do for people who've maybe been in the mortgage slavery game for 20 to 30 years, if not longer, to be able
Yeah,
to
when they
recoup
pay
all
their
of that.
house off like 3 or 4 times, by the time that it's done, they pay off 3 or 4 times the amount that they borrowed in the first place, usually.
Exactly, exactly. And what you have the ability to do through mortgage security recoupments is to recoup not just the face value of the mortgage, but what it's actually worth while it's been traded as a security, which can actually be up to 3 times the face value of what you borrowed to begin with. So not only can you recoup your bank payments every year, but you also then have the ability, let's say you had a $100,000 mortgage that you took out 15, 20 years ago, you can recoup that 100,000 back, but that's the face value. When you look at what that security is now worth, having been traded on the securities and futures markets for the last 10, 15 years, or however long you had the mortgage for, that could be worth up to 3 times the amount that you originally supposedly borrowed. So now you can create more credit coming back to you in the form of mortgage recoupments. So that's protocol number 2. We can also void and discharge mortgages. So when it comes to a mortgage, if you have the ability to understand how to void that mortgage because it was never real in the first place, and then discharge the debt, you can bring a mortgage back down to zero through different ways, one of which is commonly known as a bill of exchange. So there's different ways of doing that too. And then in isolation from that, we also have 2 other protocols. One is the Republic of Old Souls, and we have what's called a ultimate jurisdictional shield. This revolves around something, I won't go into too much detail about this, but it revolves around something called a 508c1a ministry. It's nothing to do with a person's faith or their religious beliefs, but it's to do with an actual construct that is legally recognized in the corrupt system that we have. So, by protecting yourself with this shield, being an envoy for a 508c1a ministry trust, you have the ability to rise above the legal system as we know it and appeal at the highest level, whether that be the Court of Human Rights, the European Court of Human Rights, or an International Court of Human Rights, even the International Criminal Court as well at The Hague. There's different layers to the protection that this will provide a person by separating themselves from that corporate fraud entity that we spoke about earlier, becoming what's called a ministerial envoy, but then having the shield and protection around that envoy, which is the living man or living woman as a church envoy, but having the ability to then shield that through this 508c1a structure, which is a legal structure. It's recognized in the legal world. But the difference being is that the dead corporate entity version of ourselves that sits on that monopoly board that we mentioned, we don't own that. And that's the problem. The Crown owns it. But when it comes to the 508c1a structure, we can place that on the monopoly board, but we actually own that. We own it, we control it. And that's the difference. So that's the 4th protocol. And the final part of the Great Escape protocol that we have is when you have the ability to create this jurisdictional shield around you as an individual, as a living man, as a living woman, you have the ability to recoup abandoned credit through mortgages. You have the ability to recoup the credit that you create every year through your bank payments and recoup that, to be able to cycle that multiple times and create more credit for yourself, more money coming back in. That is what will allow people the ability to buy land, to build retreats, to start an alternative health practice, whatever it is that a person wants to do. And then through the final protocol, they will be able to shield all of that, which is what we call an asset trust. So we have the ability to create a specific type of trust where they can take all of those things that they have built and created, the land, the properties, whatever it may be, and shelter that inside a private trust so that nobody can get a hold of that. which means that now, when you spoke earlier about, I want to make sure that what I do now has a positive effect on the next 7 generations. If you have created that positive structure individually, cumulatively as a nation of people, if everybody did the same thing and banded together and went down that same pathway, they can create financial abundance and freedom for themselves. And we're not talking about being greedy here. We're just talking about people being able to live in an abundant way, not have to worry, not have to stress over money, and be able to do that, and then be able to shelter all of that in a bulletproof trust so that they can pass that down generationally in perpetuity to their coming generations. Wouldn't that be an amazing thing?
Yeah, without all the taxes. Because Canada right now, they've actually put a 65% tax on anything like that's, gain value when you die. Anything that you have that's gained value, 65% of it goes to the government now.
Yeah, well, if it's in a private trust, Brady,
Yeah, exactly.
then
Sheltered from that.
it's not on
Yeah.
the monopoly board. It's not subject to taxes because it's held in the private. So the beauty about what we've put together in the Great Escape Protocol is it allows you to take advantage of what is going on in the law in the legal public world on that monopoly board and use that to your advantage. But then when you have created enough in terms of assets and wealth, you can then move all of that into the private and shelter that so that nobody can take it away from you, nobody can tax you on that. That's what we are currently working on. And right now, um, I'm not going to say we are 100% there because we're not, but we are so close. As far as the bank payment recoupments are concerned, and as far as the mortgage security recoupments are concerned, we currently have on the IRS tax transcript, and just, in case anybody doesn't really understand what the tax transcript is, essentially that is where money is moved from a ledger onto what's called the tax transcript as a credit. As in, yes, we agree this is a credit that is owed back to you. Where do you want it sending? Currently, on the IRS tax transcript for our members here, at the Republic of Old Souls, we have over $400 million worth of credit sitting on the tax transcript, ready to be claimed by those people. All we need to do now is set up the right mechanisms in place for them to actually receive that money. But we have evidence, we have the documented evidence from the IRS that that money is sitting there on the tax transcript. There's around 400 million that's gone in. No, 450 million that's actually been filed for, and we already have over 200 million of that on the transcript itself, waiting to be reclaimed. So we know this stuff works. We can prove that it works. And what we're really just trying to get out there is the message to other people, as crazy as it may seem, that you are a creditor, not a debtor, and that every piece of credit that you create, you have the right to recoup that back to source. And that would end poverty. It would end slavery. It would end all of these things that people find themselves in just in the modern day world that they live in, and then be
Yeah,
able to
and
focus their time onto the things that they want to focus their time on.
yeah, and the whole police thing too. It actually goes back to like ancient medieval times, because the whole history of, because I'll tell you a little lesson here. There was the Melchizedek priesthood and the Levitical priesthood back in medieval times. The Melchizedek priesthood made their living off of people's tithes, and they fixed up the streets and the village and the town and whatever with most of that money. That's what they used it for, and then they lived off a tiny portion of that tithe, and that's how the Melchizedek priests made their living. Then there was the Levitical priesthood, who made their living off of handing out illegal debts and making people think that something was going to happen. They were going to get punished. They were going to get jailed. They were going to do whatever if they didn't pay back those debts. But those were illegal debts, right? That's the present day police force. They are handing out illegal debts towards your person based upon the whole fraudulent system of your birth certificate name and everything. So all these debts are actually illegal, unlawful, unrighteous, and they're passed on to you, and you're said that you have to pay this off and you have to do this, or else we're going to put a bullet in your head. pull you over for, not coming to a complete stop and kill you, or we're going to throw you in jail for 18 hours like they did to me. They threw me in jail for 18 hours after that, and they're trying to charge me with assault when it was me just blocking punches and taking the guy's gun away so he didn't shoot me. Like, how is that? I'm very trained in martial arts, by the way. It would have taken me 30 seconds to knock the guy out, but I didn't hit him once because I had self-restraint. I knew that I have to treat this prick with some kind of respect, but whatever that's worth. I'm very trained because my brother was stabbed to death by a gang of 50 people when I was 15 years old. So I took some very intense martial arts training. I know every point on the body to really mess somebody up, and I could knock you out like that. But I didn't even make one hit to the officer. I just blocked all of his punches and took away his gun. And so, like, that whole thing with everything, the courts and the cops, in this town alone, it's 2,500 people in this community that I live in. But last year, in 1 month, there was $100,000 worth of fines that were paid through the Insurance Corporation of BC for people to get their licenses back. $100,000 in 1 month out of a town of 2,500 people. And you still think they're for our protection? It's nothing to do with our protection. It's about code enforcement. It's about monopolizing you and
commercial. It's a commercial operation, isn't it? They will have their targets that they have to hit every single year when it comes to fines, because that's a money generating machine for them.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. And what we're saying is, you can still live peacefully in that way. So if you get fined, pay your fine. Do you know what? Don't fight it. Pay it. It doesn't matter, because if you can pay, if you pay the fine and it comes out your bank account, you can recoup that money back as if you never paid it in the first place. And this is what we talk about. It's not a case of fighting the system. It's a case of using the system as it was actually designed to your advantage. So when it comes to taxes, when it comes to fines, when it comes to anything of that nature, rather than fight those things, just pay them anyway, smile nicely, and then recoup it all back at the end of the year so that you never had it in the first place. And that is what we now have the ability to, to provide for our members, to be able to recoup their bank payments, to be able to recoup mortgages, and to be able to shelter all of that in a private trust so that nobody can take it away from their family for generations to come. And then when it comes to the 2030 agenda, by the time that does creep in, and I'm sure it will, people will have already positioned themselves to be in a situation where they have land, they have property, they have enough wealth, all wrapped up in a private trust. The land will be in the private trust. It won't be registered to the Crown. It will be deregistered. So it doesn't matter what the agenda is that's going on around those people. They'll be able to live peacefully, live abundantly, the way that we would all like to. And that is what we are striving for here. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Like I mentioned earlier, we are also looking at alternative travel, wholesome, farm to table food. We're looking for free energy because we know it exists. We're looking at alternative healthcare because we don't trust, the big pharma. There's all these different things that we are looking at and that we are going to be building out within the Republic of Old Souls as well. So, we're definitely aligned with your thoughts and your message, Brady, and your story. It definitely resonates with me, and I'm sure it resonates with anybody that's going to be watching this in terms of the type of hardships that people are now coming up against that they would have never thought would have ever happened to them in the past. And all we're saying is, look, there is remedy to this. You don't have to keep fighting the system. The system's broken. It's corrupt. And
It's
what
not
we're
broken.
saying
It's actually working perfectly as it was designed to be. To rip people
yeah,
apart, separate people, divide them, make them live in fear and poverty and anguish and all that stuff because they're easier to control that way. So it's
exactly.
working perfectly according to
Yeah,
what they have set up.
100%, 100%. But we're rather than try and fight against the corruption, why don't we use what they have built to our favor and then be able to separate ourselves from that so
Yeah,
that Agenda 2030 won't matter. That's the goal here.
to be free.
So, Brady, any final thoughts in terms of people that are watching this? I want to just sort of leave the last words with you, if I may, before we kind of wrap this up.
Yeah, well, whatever challenges you're going through, you just got to keep your head high. I know a lot of people are going through stuff, things, everything else. One of the things I actually remember is a line from Tupac Shakur, who states, "No matter what you're going through, you might be in a dark night, you might be in the thing where you can't see anything in front of you, but you just got to remember that just like the night and the day, after every single dark night, there comes a bright day after that. So you got to hold your head up high, tuck your ass in, stick your chest out, and just handle it. Because life is going to throw at you a bunch of punches, a bunch of different things, a bunch of different challenges, as I would like to call them. Not hard times, not difficult times, challenges. Because challenges, by changing the word to challenging, challenges, it changes the energy around that whole thing, which will help you to move forward, help you to push forward in whatever it is that you're doing, whatever battle it is you're facing. So I know we all face it, and some of us don't talk about it. Some of us don't have that luxury to be able to talk about it.
Mm.
And so whatever it is that you're facing, just keep on going forward. Solutions like this come up. Solutions that will come up throughout the years. There's different things that are going on, like you were mentioning. The trust aspect. Okay, we have a corporation, the trust actually that's working right now. We also have private internet through a thing called Love Pods. It's private internet that's based upon the emergency network, so it's the last one to go out, and it's satellite internet via a little thing that's about the size of a cell phone. We have companies out of Africa that are making it private decentralized internet on the 4G network. We're not doing 5G, so we have different things that are happening out there. This is with the Alliance of Indigenous Nations, and we have different things that are out there, different groups. And if we all coordinate together, which is what we
Mm.
should be doing in the first place, we should all be kind of working together and being like, okay, you know what? The biggest illusion in the entire world is that we're separate from everybody else. That's the
Mm.
biggest illusion that they've sold us. We are not. We need to band together as one race, as one people, and actually come together to fight with love, with power, with unity. Our arrows are now love, power, unity. They're no longer the arrows that are going to kill people, but we got to come together with all of those. And when we come together with those and we realize how connected we are with everybody else, and we start to love the people, we start to be in unity instead of constantly going like this. That's exactly what they want us to do. They want us to go like this. They don't want us to band together because they know
No.
there's more of us than there are of them. So they got to keep this psychological manipulation and control in our minds, keep us in fear, keep us living down on the lower levels so that we don't fight. Because when we're in fear, it's called the reptilian brain. It
Yep.
just
Fight or
goes into
flight. Yeah.
fight or flight. You don't think creatively. 38% of
Yeah.
your brain is your frontal lobe. You need to wake up the frontal lobe and actually activate that frontal lobe. There's a brilliant book by Neil, what's his name, Neil Strauss, called "Tickle Your Amygdala." And he
Yeah.
talks about how the amygdala is inside behind your eyes there, and it's this little bit, and you can imagine like a little feather, or a little feather of light, stroking it, feeling it, doing everything else, sticking it in through your head and go tickle, 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 tickle,
Yeah.
and it actually like activates your amygdala when you're tickling that amygdala. It activates it. If you do that enough, it'll cause an amygdala explosion, which will activate your frontal lobe, and your creative side will come up more than your reptilian brain. Right? And you'll actually get into that state of wanting to be creative, wanting to come to the next solution, wanting to overcome the next challenge, right? Overcome this challenging situation, because we just want to activate that frontal lobe in everything that we're doing and start to empower ourselves to stand up, to be creative, to make solutions, to create solutions, and to see the solutions when they come, when they're staring you in the face. You need to
Hmm.
be able to recognize them. Because if you're not like looking for them and you're thinking everything's hard, so difficult, I can't do it, you're in that energy of,
Yeah.
oh, it's hopeless, I can't,
Yeah.
nothing,
You're
everything I
just
do.
manifesting more of the same, aren't you? That's
Yeah.
all you're doing.
So challenge and challenging, replace those words. Challenging and challenge. No more hard, no more difficult. Erase those from your vocabulary completely. Erase those from your vocabulary. Replace it with challenge or challenging. And those couple of things, that little step there, will change your whole momentum of your life. You'll start to roll and move and go forward and look for solutions. Look for real solutions towards opening up your mind, because the whole entire universe is created from within us.
Well,
Within
Brady,
us.
I absolutely love your energy. I really do. And I really appreciate you jumping on with us today. If anybody's watching this, then we're going to be posting this on the ROS Media channel. So you'll be able to see it there. Obviously, Brady will be giving you a copy of the interview as well. Been a pleasure to have you on today. And, at some point, we'd love to have you back as well. So we'll try and get that set up for the future. But first and foremost, thank you for jumping on. Thank you for telling us a little bit more about your story and about your background and about your history and your people, and obviously the positivity that you have displayed as well throughout these different challenges, throughout these different things that have cropped up. And more importantly, like I've said, we want to be able to band together with people like yourself and talk more about the solutions than the challenges. So thank you for coming on, Brady. And we will see you in the next episode. Bye for now, guys.
Fantastic. Have a good night. Good day.